But
that's one of the hardest things. I have to tell you. You know, I looked at my phone and I saw that it was 4 degrees, and I said, "Oh my God, it's freezing here!" And then I realized that I was in Celsius instead of Fahrenheit. You know?
So in Thailand, do they talk Celsius and meters and kilos and all that stuff?
Oh, America is the only one that's in Fahrenheit. Everywhere else, I don't think there's any. I don't think anywhere else is you know.
I don't know.
And it's hard to figure out.
In England, I heard people talking about, well, I just lost a stone.
Yeah.
A stone?
Yeah.
Yep, that's what?
18 pounds or 14 pounds,
18
rather.
pounds, yeah.
I think it's 14 or 18.
I thought it was a kidney stone. They lost a kidney stone, and that's a good thing.
Yeah,
boy, those are
18-pound kidney stone. Yeah, you're in big trouble.
You'd be screaming.
What is it there? What is it there, Ken?
Well, in my warehouse, we measure stuff by how deep the pile was, the cable on the floor, like it's 1 ankle or 2 ankles or maybe a knee.
Oh, that's cool. Ankles. That's great. Oh, how funny.
It's very good. Well, I will say welcome to Thinking Out Loud with Friends of SoundBroker, everybody. 296 episodes. This will be the 296. You guys make it happen. Very excited. I want to show you something right now. This is YouTube Studio. These are the results. If you could see that. 64,000 views, baby. We are moving along here. And that's
right now, that's who's on?
No, right now it's only us chickens. Other than that.
Wow.
No. Who knows how many people are watching right now? But here's the interesting thing. People are watching this. It's like, 294 minutes of watching it in the last 28 days. That's insane. I just am so happy that people have nothing better to do.
The funny thing is when we first started talking about the feedback thing, I had more people call me and say, "Hey, I saw you on Jan's SoundBroker thing, talking in the group when you were demoing the feedback thing. And what do I think about it?" And I'm like, "Well, I haven't used it yet. I'm going to use it with Wayne this weekend, but this was a couple of weeks ago." But I couldn't believe how many people actually called me and said, "Hey, I saw you on that," and called me. I just thought that was so weird.
I will tell you something else that I found almost more than discombobulating. People coming over to me at the NAMM show, and they were starting to talk. "Hey, Jan, how you doing?" And how do they know me? And then I realized that as I started talking to them, they have seen me on this show, and that's how they recognize me.
So you're a star now, Jan.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm a star, but I'm a character for sure.
No doubt.
Yeah, well, I think we owe Devin a huge thank you for all the views. We're going to have to cut him a slice soon if things start going up.
Well, here's the deal. I'm going to share the wealth with you guys. Right now, you all owe me money, though. So,
actually, there was a lot of people who came up who knew about it from watching the show.
Isn't that funny? Oh, wow.
Well, if you look in the comments, if you look in the users group, Devin, you'll see me frequently reposting it.
No, that particular show had over 24,000 views so far.
Yeah, actually, that was a really comprehensive hour.
It was great. Yeah.
It's funny. I wish that the hour after it had ended had also been recorded, because we ended up talking about a bunch of interesting stuff.
That was also very good. Yeah.
We can do another one. But right now we're going to talk about NAMM, and I will tell you, I walked over. Yeah, Ken.
Devin, did you? We talked at NAMM, and your dad was going to see if the schedule, but I got an email from Robert, said he was going to talk about feedback in the EAW room at AES Nashville, the 23rd, 24th, 25th.
Yeah, I think he's maybe going to try to squeeze that in, and I might try to hop on virtually, because I don't think I can be there, but he did want to try to say
Nashville's the center of the production universe. You should be here.
I got it. I imagine it, but I have a I've got a job I have to do during that time that's been scheduled. So unfortunately, I can't break free. But that, yeah.
Well, if you need a representative in Nashville, I am Ken Porter's agent. I will meet with you. And we will discuss it, and we will discuss it at great lengths. I will cut you such a deal you wouldn't believe. Hey, we're dealing now. But seriously, folks, the line up to get to see you at NAMM was astronomical. I mean, it was like,
was it really?
How much water and mints did you go through? Because you must have had dry mouth like crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, it's funny. I forgot. Like, there's no lunch break. There's literally I didn't eat lunch. Like, I had breath mints for lunch, basically, all 3 days.
Breath mints.
And, yeah, that's pretty much it. No, I mean, the only other time I've experienced stuff like this is like when I went to college, I was the piano player for the choir and orchestra, and before everything starts, like the first semester, you show up early for a rehearsal camp. So you're just there, and it's like the choir, the huge choir. The orchestra isn't there yet. It was just me on the piano. So I'm sitting there, and like I don't know anyone. I'm a freshman. I just get there. I'm playing piano. But like think about it, for a week long, like everyone is looking at me because I'm sitting right there playing the piano. And I'd have people on campus come up to me and just act like they knew me. Like, hey, Devan. And I'm like, I don't know you. But that's like, that's like the only time I've experienced that, where people come up and say, I've watched your videos since 2016. I've watched like everything you put out on the internet and stuff. And it's so cool. I always wonder like, who watches those videos? But I guess people do. Yeah, but it's fun. It's a little bit overwhelming.
So Devan, as far as food goes, did you ever get that candy bar that I sent to you through your dad?
No, I'm gonna have to ask him about that.
No, I saw him wolf it down when you handed it to him, David.
I gave him two and an apple. I gave him two like granola bars and an apple. I couldn't find anything else.
I think yes. Let me see. Did we get that? Yeah, I think I saw that somewhere.
I felt so bad for you and your dad. Neither one of you could leave.
Well, that is.
Yeah. I just have to tell you, he stole it from the Meyer booth to bring it over to you.
That's right. That's right.
It wasn't like he brought it from home to give to you. I just want you to know.
Yeah, it was on the spur of the moment. I saw it and I grabbed it.
Well,
yeah, but your booth was really cool. I want to talk about your booth because basically you were at the Waves. You were in the Waves area, and you were using a live server. And you had an LV1 console there, and you had a microphone with with a foldback speaker and two headsets. And basically, you would put the fader up as it would fade to started to feed back without the defeedback kicked in, and then you would click the button on the screen, and all of a sudden the feedback disappeared like it was magic. It was mind blowing, It was like, and then he turned to the guy and would say, "How many do you want?"
Yeah.
And his dad was there with an order pad,
Yeah, it was even better than that because it was not just the feedback, but it was the hollowness of the room sound as well that disappeared.
Oh yeah, the noise floor. Yeah, the noise floor went away. That was very cool.
Yeah, I tried to basically, I mean, obviously, like the low hanging fruit is the defeedback portion. People are the very first time that you hear it, and it's like you could always prepare it. So it's like a lot of people might fake a demo like that, but you can hear how the vocal doesn't change. The sound of the vocal doesn't change. It just stops the feedback in its tracks. That the first time that you hear that is a really like strange experience for people because they've never heard that before. It's like most people don't even think that's possible. What they're hearing, it's like they don't believe what they're hearing. They're like, "What?"
They don't think it's possible. Correct.
Like, what is happening right now? I think that in the first time we did this, Jan, I mentioned that like I had the only time I've had a very similar experience was when I first experienced cardioid subs. When you walk around the backside of a cardioid sub for the first time, especially ones like I mentioned, like ones where you can see the driver in the back. You can see the 18-inch just pumping away, and it drops like 30, 40 dB in that null, and you're like, this is weird. I don't understand.
It's not. It doesn't feel normal, you know.
Yeah, and it's fun. I mean, really, I don't think it'll ever get old seeing people's reaction to it the first time because it's just so they're just like, what am I even experiencing right now? And then of course to put the headphones on and do the noise reduction and the de-reverb and all that. That's
So have you guys fine-tuned that lately, or was it always doing that right from the beginning?
It's that the sonically, all that's changed since the very first version we put out over a year ago is that we retrained it a little bit better for choir. But
Oh,
that
interesting.
all the de-reverb and all the everything is it's all, it's all basically the same as it's always been. And it's funny because we didn't even advertise that it did any denoise at the beginning. Early versions of the UI didn't even say it. On the website, it didn't say denoise. And then I had people telling me I'm ripping my DNS8 out and putting D-feedback in, sometimes purely for the denoise. Guys in broadcast were saying, it's not about feedback for me. It's not even really about the room. It's just that it does zero latency denoise without any weird artifacts. It just sounds better. And I was like,
Wow.
we should probably push that then. Because we threw it in just as we developed our own denoise algorithm. We just threw it in. We didn't even turn it on that aggressively. We noticed it helped with the D feedback and D reverb portion of it. So
Wow.
yeah, totally, totally crazy. And it's interesting because a lot of people at NAMM, there's guys walking around that actually know about stuff, and they come up and kind of ask me questions that I can't answer. And I'm like, oh, you know things. You could be dangerous if I disclose too many
Well,
details.
well, if you think they know things at NAMM, wait till you go to
Yeah.
AES. That is where they really know things.
Yeah, yeah,
Those are the brainiacs of our industry. Where they actually know what the white papers are, and they write the white
But
papers.
yeah, yeah. They're the guys that
but
write the
they're
white papers. Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
AI coders walking around NAMM
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, well, it's funny because even the UI, for example, you open up the UI and you look at it. If you're a coder and you've done stuff before, you know that is just the way that it comes off. It's like hot off the press. That's the way it looks before you actually make your own UI. That's just the default skin that it
Right.
produces. And we just decided to leave it like that because we're like, whatever, we don't care. We don't care about the UI. We care about how it sounds. I flirted with the idea of not having a UI. Anyway,
Right.
it's so funny because I had guys coming around and be like, is that is that the default like, juice skin? Is that just like what it does? Like I've seen that before. And I'm like, yeah. So yeah. But
Well,
no one knows that. So anyway, it kind of worked out because like nobody knows that. So it just ended up being kind of iconic because nobody does that and no one knows what it is.
Right.
So
They want to rebrand it and do all the marketing, blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
I had
Well,
some interesting offers to have guys work on the UI portion of it.
yeah. How many did you need to have Did you need to have a forklift and a truck of all the business cards you got to carry them out of there, or what?
I did get quite a few.
Wheelbarrow?
Although, I feel like an idiot now because I kept trying to scan people's QR codes and I was like, I don't know, this isn't working. And then finally on like day 3, someone said you got to have the actual app to like do it right. It doesn't just work with like a camera, you know. You try to scan the little QR code on their tag with just the camera
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't go anywhere. I didn't figure this out till
Nobody was using it though. I was very surprised. Normally, you scan the tag, but nobody was using it. Either they were charging too much, or it wasn't available for the show. One of the two.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I got a lot of business cards. That's
Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, listen, we got a comment, and I want to read it. I started reading it earlier, but I'm going to
Oh,
read it right
yeah.
now. It's
This
from a
is
guy
fun.
named Ibrahim 47X, and he wrote, I'm just going ahead and saying it. I've been working on a similar thing for 3 years. The more ethical problem that I'm not running into is the fact that this technology is actually cloning the input, and the output is not actually the input anymore. In other words, what he's saying is it's going in as real and coming out as AI, right? And then I'm just paraphrasing what he's saying here. It might sound like your voice, but it's no longer your actual authentic voice coming out. It's reimagining the output. If it was doing something to the noise floor and everything around the voice alone, then you'd be retaining the original voice, but with more artifacts at this point, separating the noise from human voices. The other issue, of course, is the latency. And I agree with the original sentiment that issue of feedback seems too simple not to have been solved by now. But I am thinking more physics approach and DSP is better than AI voice cloning. What do you guys think of that?
Is that was that a comment about defeedback specifically, or just in
I
general?
have no idea.
Oh, well, where'd you find it? Who did you send it to, like, directly?
Yeah, I'd have to look for it. But I think it was from defeedback. I was from one of the shorts, actually. So the reality is that I think that anything in our industry, for example, let's say we were putting reverb on the mic. Well, that wouldn't be, nobody sounds like that in real life. If you listen to a record on the radio, that's not what it sounded like going in either.
I don't think that's what he's getting. I don't know, Devan, I know you're going to answer it, but my take on that was, you're not touching the voice, right?
Right. No, it's not a vocal. Okay, so here's the thing. Look, as a team, we've talked about this. We talked about this a long time ago, like doing real-time vocal emulation, basically. So the idea would be that like it listens to the sound coming in. It's like a real-time 11 Labs voice generation. It's like basically it's like trying to do a voice clone in real time at as low of latency as we can. We seriously entertain that because we can do it, but we couldn't get it down to zero latency and have it sound right. So that, is not something that maybe eventually, I don't know, there's some interesting applications there. But that was something we toyed with, but yeah, we're not doing that. So what we're doing is we're creating a filter. It's like a real-time IR filter. So we're just canceling out anything that we don't want in there that we can bake into that filter in real time and just constantly update it. So in that way, it's like not, it's actually the opposite. It's leaving the voice intact and it's tweaking everything else. What's interesting is that there's probably going to be systems that come along that do like, look, okay, so how about this? What about the waves in trigger, right? This is something I've been keeping my eye on that's doing real-time drum replacement. So if you go to a concert and let's say you can't really hear the acoustic drums because it's a big enough venue, but you're in real time, you're replacing it with like, better sound, right? Samples. It's like, what's going on here? It's funny. I've been, talking with so many people about this. All these conversations kind of go back to like the whole digital versus analog thing anyway, when people digitize audio signals and then you reconvert it to analog at the speaker, amplifier and speaker end. It's like all these same debates apply. Like, oh, we've lost the original sound that came in through the microphone capsule was an analog waveform. And yes, we represented it with like voltages and stuff, but all the way from mic to speaker, there's a direct electrical connection between the movement of the mic and the movement of the speaker. It's an unbroken direct physical connection. So there's this like philosophical purity. And then the moment we digitize it, right, and packetize it and turned it into buffers and all this, it's like somehow this is like philosophically lost and people freaked out. I remember having all these debates in college. There were guys that were just like super, super against digital, not for like sonic quality purposes or anything like that. It was a philosophical problem. They're like, there's some purity that's lost, and this is a lie. It's all a lie. We go to a concert, and I'm like, oh boy. So I feel like there's a similar rub when it comes to the whole AI thing, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, the same thing here has got to do. You look at the Kempers and guitars, and you have where people put the master track sounds into it, and then whatever is played into it is modeled after the sound with the sound of master track. It the same way that Nord does the drum samplers and all that stuff too, with their drum sound. It's all pre-sampled, the pre-sound. It takes what's played and turns it into the sound that's on the record.
The other thing I saw too from Mellotron was, everybody remembers Mellotrons, big, huge tape cassettes. in a keyboard. Yes was Rick Wakeman and Yes, and the Moody Blues all use Mellotrons. Well, now they've come out with a digital Mellotron where they've gone back to their master tapes and digitized it all. They have you have a 2U box, and then you just have a keyboard that you plug it in, and then you have the Mellotron from 1974. And they're selling it. Oh, well, you want this? You want the 1975 sound? Well, you need to buy this little cartridge to stick in the back of the box, and there you go. So,
well, it's almost like the Moog, right, Greg? The Moog was like that as well.
Well, no, Moog was actually creating digital sound. It had an oscillator and a filter generator and things, so that you were actually creating it. Whereas a Mellotron, they went out and they recorded like an organ or a choir, one note at a time throughout.
Three tracks of audio.
Yeah, so there's a fantastic interview on Rick Beato where he interviews the owner of Neural, the quad, these Neural DSPs, and they actually go into the room where they model amps and floor toys and things, and they have actually servo-controlled things that move all of the knobs, because these are analog knobs, right? They can be placed in. So he basically explains how they put a microphone next to the amp, they give it a signal, and then they move the knobs
to 11
hours and hours and hours to capture what all the knobs do. And then once they've done that, they move that model into their DSP. But I have to say the neural stuff is really good. I think it smokes what Kemper's can do.
It seems like getting back to the fact that this guy thinks that you're modifying the audio and it's no longer real. You're on zero latency, so you are not touching that audio. You have to have some sort of latency to process it.
Well, I mean,
is that correct?
We're doing processing. It's just that part of the signal we're processing is not the vocal. It's using
right, but the fact that it's at zero latency means that you can't be processing the actual vocal, right? You'd have to have something because you're actually doing something digital to it. So there would be some sort of latency there.
That sort of gets back to, when we say we're running at zero latency, what we mean is we're not arbitrarily adding more latency than what the program has to work with in its buffer. So, I mean, there's latency there because, like you have to have, let's forget the IO latency itself, like the actual conversion from the audio in and off the USB stack, like that. Forget that. Just the fact that like there's an audio buffer, right? It's sort of like, it like fills up its buffer with some samples, and then it runs your graph and it has to pump that through the CPU. It's like that's latency just because that's just how it works. You have to have a buffer. So you can run it as low as, your program or your audio device or whatever will let you. Like in this case, for example, with like the Focusrite interface, we can run it at a 16 sample buffer at 48K. That means that at any one time when the program is doing number crunching, it's number crunching on 16 samples of audio at a time. It's like mouthfuls of audio. And basically, it's like how, that's its size. Now, like that's just at 48K, 16 samples is just, there's a known latency there. That's a certain amount of latency. And then you just have however many other samples it just takes to get the audio, shuffle the audio through the whole pipeline. Now there's plugins that have to have a certain amount of samples in order to function. You can't run them at any lower. A lot of FFT based types of things might require a minimum sample, otherwise they just don't function because there has to be a certain length of FFT or whatever. In our case, defeedback happens to be sample independent. So, I mean, if you had like a quantum computer, you could run it at one sample buffer. It'd be fine. But but also separately, then you have the issue of you know, like look at like, I don't know, I'm just gonna take like waves clarity or something. This is a D reverb, and it's like it doesn't care what your buffer size is in your DAW. It also says, I don't care whatever else you got going on, I'm gonna show up to the table and demand that you just add whatever 42 and a half milliseconds of latency, right? It's like 2000 some samples just for me. Just me. I just want that much extra. Whatever else is going on, I want that much extra. So that's what we talk about when we talk about plug-in latency. It's like how much extra are you arbitrarily adding to the table when you show up? Some plugins are zero. They're just fine with the DAW's actual buffer in the audio engine. That's like fine enough for them. Other plugins say, whatever else you got going on, I'm going to arbitrarily add an extra amount. And so yeah, I mean, like it's because you're running at zero latency, so to speak, in the plugin world, doesn't mean that you know you like aren't doing processing or something like this. You're still processing. You're just processing on the buffer itself. So yeah, I mean, in that sense, like we could be tweaking the vocal. We could be doing processing on the vocal, but it just by the nature of defeedback, we just aren't. We're leaving it alone because we're just having a filter that's selective and it's targeting, like it's sonic targeting. It's only including certain things in its filter, right? And you know, it's leaving it alone. It'd be like, I don't know, it'd be like a dynamic, you know, multi-band compressor where it's like you may be compressing the high frequencies, but you're not touching the low frequencies. That's like a frequency-wise way to understand that you can affect some parts of the signal and not others. An IR filter is you can literally affect anything in an IR, an impulse response sense. You can target things that way. So you could literally remove just the reverb, or you could remove just the background noise. I mean, heck, you could remove a specific sound. Like
Right.
I did an experiment where I shouted and combined two different recordings of like a honking sound and me shouting, and I made an IR of the honking sound and then basically just inverted it, and I played it back, and I can just selectively remove the honking sound from my my talking voice. You can just selectively, use it that way. Um, that's really hard. I mean, if people have never really grappled with that, there's many, many intellectual, like conceptual steps you have to go through to like get to the point where you can finally see what's happening. It's really difficult. I mean, it's not an easy thing you know, to wrap your brain around. It was hard for me. It
Well,
took
the
me.
fact too is it's taken quite some time even to find the folks that to be on your team too. You
Yeah.
know,
Oh
and
gosh, I mean that took years, you
and
know.
then for them to get their head around audio because they were in a whole different field, weren't they?
I think, well, that's exactly what I think is going on with a lot of these, larger companies that, are sort of these legacy companies are typically from what I understand happens is that uh, they're taking their audio people and they're saying, hey, go like, go learn how to code AI or whatever. Everyone's trying to play catch up on the AI front. They're having audio people go learn how to do AI. But it's like, for the most part, there's some things you can do. It's fine. But like if you want to do really, really serious work, you need to figure out how to get people who live and breathe AI and sort of invite them into the audio space and
Right.
be, I'm gonna either teach you just enough audio to kind of know what to do to get by here, or like I've done, like basically I'm like the audio guy. And I'm like a chat GPT super user. I know I've learned just enough using chat GPT. I've essentially self-taught just enough to be able to interface with high level AI people. And I literally use chat GPT as I'm communicating. Like, and I tell them I do this. I say, look, I'm taking I'm taking what you tell me, and I put it into ChatGPT and I say, okay, explain this to me like I'm five. And then I have a conversation with ChatGPT about what we're doing, and then I convert it back into smart people talk and I send it back to them. And so that's how we communicate a lot of times. And it works. It does, it works.
That's
It's amazing.
great. That's fantastic, Devan. What a you know.
I've been amazed at how good ChatGPT is, but basically, my wife and I have been, on various places on vacation, and she discovered Chat GTP and named it Betsy. And Betsy plans all of our day trips when we're away. And she has nailed it every single time. I mean, the time frames and where to eat and how long to take and I said to Annie, I said, you better watch it. I'm going to start dating Betsy.
Well,
There's
Bruce,
a
you
great
got to be
South
careful.
Park episode.
But it's
You got to
really
be
got
careful.
really.
Sometimes AI does fuck it up, and
Well,
there are some experiences of people who went on vacation following ChatGPT to find out that they went to non-existent places.
Yeah, well, I said to Annie, I said, you have to realize one thing. And I said, and I'm very cognizant of this because Jan, I don't always think like everybody else does. And I said, ChatGTP knows a shitload about whatever anybody put in there. I says, but it all depends on what people put in, what you're going to get out. And I said, sometimes that can be very straightforward. Yes, no, is this, what's here, what's there, whatever. Or, if you get into life questions or political questions or anything else, you're not going to always get the answer you want, because it just depends on who put the information in there. So, I'm having trouble getting her to understand that because she's madly in love with Betsy now, and we get in the car and the first thing she does is start talking to Betsy about where we're going and what we're doing. And I'm like,
I think that's a problem. I think that's a problem that a lot of people are facing.
It's really funny. Yeah, we're going to Florida to work next month in February, and we're going a week before the show, and we're staying a week after the show, and we're going to see a bunch of my cousins and stuff. And she basically said, what's our schedule other than the show days that I'll be there? And then she's going to figure out, she's going to run around to all the Disney, parks while I'm working. So.
And by the way,
it's been very funny.
You'll have a lot of fun because we went to Disneyland, but I don't want to talk about that yet. I'll get into that in a minute, but I want to still talk about latency because the Chinese are making it more and more difficult. And I just want to show you this picture right here that the Chinese are now grafting ears onto people's feet.
Why would they do that? Does it say why?
Because the guy lost his ear and they couldn't figure out how to do it. So they grafted onto his foot until they could figure out how to put it back on his head.
Oh, it's kind of like it's a filing cabinet then. It's just hanging out there so they won't lose it. It must be tough to put on a pair of shoes then, huh?
Yeah.
It must be very much. Yeah, definitely. So
yeah. Well,
I'm curious what everybody thinks about just auto tune in general, because what you think about that will, I think, determine a lot of how you react to these new AI technologies.
Do you know the auto tune? I was ruined on auto tune in the beginning because as a sound guy even, because my first experiences with auto tune was these rapper guys and all these people destroying their voices. Half of the music now is distortion that they want that I would never want, And so when I've been in a studio or had somebody show me that auto tune can actually correct your pitch, it's like, oh, I just thought it destroyed shit,
Yeah.
So
I looked at a lot of consoles.
I still have a problem wrapping my head around the fact that autotune fixes things because that's not how I was introduced to it,
I see it a lot in houses of worship now.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of houses of worship are using autotune plugins.
Because half the bands can't sing?
Well.
Well, I mean, that is the reality for a lot of churches is there's a demand for quality. There's a certain way that things have to sound. There's like an expectation. And your average worship team is probably not going to be able to do that, but you can get there with auto tune and
some other tricks, I'm sure.
So yeah.
Hey, if it's
Hey Steve, is your band using auto tune?
No,
use it.
You're not using auto tune on that on the washboard? Nope, not at all. Not yet. Not yet. Hey.
Yeah, I mean, if you have people, I mean, again, like the debates rage on, like what's happening there. If singing into a mic and then you're flat or whatever, And let's say it's not intentional, and you basically want to use technology to fix it, to make you hit the note right, and when you didn't. Is this like a lie? Like, do you have to disclose to concert goers that you're using this technology because they are under the impression that they're witness. This is why they're there.
You can sing.
But
Yeah, because otherwise they could just go listen to the CD. But no, they're there to like experience you as a person doing this in front of their very eyes and ears. And if you're saying now this isn't true, what I'm hearing, it'd be like, what if we just extend this out and say it was all tracks? They were just air banding it and lip syncing, and it's all tracks. Is this a problem? Like, do I want my money back? Should you have to at least disclose this?
Well, it's an interesting thing. I used to work, when I was at A1 Audio, we had a female vocalist. I'm not going to mention her name, but she couldn't hit the high notes anymore. She just couldn't hit it. And so she was doing it to click track. And then when it came to the high notes, we were, we were playing pre-recorded music for her.
You punched her in? You punched her in?
Yeah, I didn't do it, but David, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
I think you were involved in that as well. I mean, and a lot of people have done that. I mean, it's how, the augmented ability that we have to give to these artists to make them sound better. I mean, how many artists are actually singing raw into the mic? No one. Greg, what do you got to say about this? Because, your acts, what you're working on right now, I don't even believe anybody's, it's just music, right? That's background music for the performers.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for, first of all, thank you for having this meeting once again, and it's great to see everybody, and great to see you at NAMM. We had a great time.
Love seeing you at NAMM. It was phenomenal. You were fun to hang out with.
I have a very unique approach, and I have a very unpopular opinion about autocorrection. I did work with the mega church that indeed required perfection, that certain level of performance was in the script and required and expected. And there was an auto-tune on every vocal channel there. Doesn't matter who that was. I'm not going to name the church. I'm not going to name any singers. It's not on my resume. But I was polishing my D-Live skills years ago, thanks to that opportunity. Now, this environment, I could understand and not, because on one hand, people who come to the church, they don't pay for the show. And on the other hand, they actually do pay. They leave some money during the service. So they might demand quality, right? So here's the quality delivered. Now, on the road, when you actually are on the tour and you see the band, you may look at it from two perspectives. And I approach it from the first one. You, as a singer, as a vocalist, need to allow yourself for certain margin of imperfection. And I'm not saying that you can screw up every sentence and go off tune every line, but if you do not hit that high note perfectly, if you go quarter of the semitone off on a certain passage once in a while, I believe even Stevie Wonder, when I was at the Four Queens concerts, there one note somewhere and here and there that will not sound, maybe not terribly right, but it didn't sound like the original. And you're like, oh, well, that's just being human. On the other hand, if you repeatedly making vocal mistakes and you are relying on the autocorrection to provide a good show, well, that's the time to actually sell the equipment that is correcting your voice and invest in the vocal coach, because that's straightforward lying to the audience. And I think, Devan, when you asked this question, your point was, how far do artists go, and when does it stop being support, and when does it start to become something irreplaceable, something that we heavily lean onto, like a crutches that we're nervously holding on and can't let go. And that is it, right? If you're a rapper and you created a special performance and effect, and it's a part of your show and everybody's used to that, it's on your record, sure, go with it. But if you're a vocalist with the band and everybody spent X amount of years learning the instrument, studying notes, sitting at home and hammering those piano skills or violin, same for the vocalists. I, to this day, take classes 2 times a week with my teacher. And my teacher is unforgiving. She says, I dare you go on stage having those notes not even polished to the way I expect you to. Like, you have to be representing certain level to call yourself a singer. So here's my approach on this one. If I spend 10 years polishing my, actually 20 years polishing my front of house engineering skills, and I bring certain level of quality and work to the table, why would I not request the same from the singer to deliver that to the stage? Why would not the audience member expect that from the band to deliver to them if they pay for the tickets? And if they make a mistake once in a while and slip on a few notes during the show, fine, we're all humans. I do a mistake once in a while too. It's part of the performance. And then they play off each other. You probably watch many times performances like Louis Armstrong or people from jazz, and they hit the wrong note. But it's not about that wrong note. It's about what happened next. That the recovery, that's the art. That's what people study in music. So I strongly believe that those people really could invest more in classes and less in lying to the audience. However,
okay. Well, let me interrupt you. I want to interrupt you because we got your point.
Go ahead.
But here's another point. Take the band, the Rolling Stones. Okay, and I'm just going to use them as an example. I heard that they are using auto-tune, and the reality is that if I'm going to see the Rolling Stones, I wanted the best show I could possibly hear. So these guys are old, and they can't possibly be at the same level they were when they were just getting started. But there are bands, and I think that's important.
There are things that you can do, though, Jan, a band could do. They could tune down a half step.
Drop the key.
Yep. Just tune down a half step. So that extra high note isn't, that extra half step, when you hit that high note, that helps save the voice. Sometimes they even tune down a whole step, and you don't really notice it unless you compare it to the band, So compare it to the original recording, and in the studio they do things like you can slow down when you're doing the vocal. You can variably slow down the analog tape deck. Okay, that's been done to go ahead and raise the pitch or lower the pitch of a particular vocal track. So
yeah, well, Greg, but it's not necessarily the vocal part, but it's what they're hearing. In other words, they're old men, and we as you get older, your hearing definitely deteriorates in most cases.
I can actually speak up on the Rolling Stones because I was on their show 3 times. Once doing the opening act. There is no vocal correction. Mick Jagger still takes vocal classes and exercises his voice just like he's exercising his muscles with dancing. Yeah. He's on top of it.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't say it was him. I didn't say it was him. I just said it was the band itself. There were other people in the band other than, other than Mick Jagger.
Correction there. No autocorrection nowhere.
Yeah, well, you have to have
research, and everything is an opinion. That's what I would say.
Yeah. That's right. Remember, everything you hear today is an opinion. Do your own research. What can I say? How would I know anyway about the Rolling Stones? Well, I don't even know who they are.
A couple things to throw out there is that there's a difference between a musician and an entertainer. The musician is trying to be the purity, and the entertainer is there to make the people. You talk about your church, and you talk about why people. They're trying to be thus distracting, but people come to the church or come to events to have an experience, not always just to say, I'm listening to the music and make sure, oh, well, that was a little off or whatever, because half the people in the audience singing with them is off too.
Yeah. And
well, let me ask you this, Ken, do you have any auto-tune in your inventory?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. That's all there is. If you're going to have technology, you got to use it. That's all there is. That's what I'm saying. If you have technology, use it so that, people are getting the maximum amount of benefit from their, from going to a show. I don't see anything wrong about it.
So Ken, I have a question for you specifically. You own a shitload of gear. When you go out to a show, if somebody gives you a spec to write and there's no auto tune in the spec, do you bring it with you?
Nope. Engineer affects it. A lot of times engineers bring their own if they're sometimes we have to provide them.
But you don't bring it just in case.
Nope.
Okay, that's interesting.
But
stop me if I'm wrong, guys. Stop me if I'm wrong. Are there any manufacturers of consoles that are putting auto-tune in their consoles? Is it Allen and Heath putting it in their console?
Yes.
Is Digico putting it in their console? Is Yamaha, Avid? Who's putting auto-tune in their consoles?
Well, all I know is that when I was leaving NAMM, I was chased by a roving horde of K-pop demon hunters, and I threw auto tuners on the ground, and they stopped chasing me.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, here's the thing. This all goes back to conversations I remember having. I mean, gosh, this goes back to college. Like, okay, think of it. Look at this environment where you're doing sound for a classical music event. All right. So here's the thing about this. You have to ask, what are people there for? What do they want? This, for example, with classical music, we've got ourselves into a position these days. This is like my shoebox. I just am like, okay, so with classical music, people are often going to classical music to have a museum-like experience. They want it to be the way it was at that time period when this music would have been written. We kind of want to like preserve it, and we can do it as best, and we can have like, well designed halls that wouldn't have been possible at the time. Instruments now are better designed than they would have been, although some people even do like say like we're going to revert to period instruments and stuff like this that are like the way they would have been back then or whatever. But like generally speaking, the idea is we're trying to preserve the past and present it like kind of like a museum like experience. But if that's what you want, then great. That's where most of the frustrations come in when like people go to do sound for classical music, is there's a conflict over what the goal here is. A sound engineer will come into that environment and they'll be like, well, I can use technology. I can use microphones and I can use speakers, and I can enhance this sound in a certain way that's pleasing as judged by even many people who would attend. And like I can look at this amazing sound that we can get out of this. Yes, but that may be in conflict with what the goal of either the artistic producers or the musicians or many of the people attending. So it's like, okay, if you have to decide, you have to just decide what you're there for. If you're going to see Hans Zimmer live, it's basically just like amplified classical music in a lot of cases, but if you're going to see a Bach, cantata or something like this is very different.
You want the room reverb in there. You want to hear the hall.
You're muted, Bruce.
So yeah, I just want to. So when I was in school, so this is in the 70s, right? Okay, I'm showing my age. When I took my sound reinforcement and studio classes, I was a music major, but I didn't graduate with a music degree. I had a certificate in the recording arts, and I'd never finished, and I went to work. But our teacher was like adamant about the fact that we were not inventing anything. What we were doing is sound reinforcement. We were taking what was on the stage and making it bigger for the people in the audience to hear it, but it needed to be what they were doing on the stage. It was not our job to fix it or doctor it up or put a Band-Aid on it or make something that isn't there, which to me, auto-tune and harmonizers and all this bullshit, that's how I got introduced to all those things, coming into the rock world at the end of school, thinking I was supposed to make, when somebody says, what do you do for a living? I say, I make soft things louder. Well, essentially, that's what I was taught we were doing.
Okay, so let's try something on for size and see.
Okay, this is great.
All right, so let's do it. This is like
I'm ready for you. I'm ready for you.
Storm here. Okay, so
be careful. Bruce is excited.
I'm excited too. Okay.
I think this is great.
Bruce, keep your hands where we can see him, Bruce. Keep your hands where we can see him. Okay.
Here, we'll do this. We'll start. Let's take a simple example. Kick drum. Is the goal to make the sound of that kick drum as heard standing 3 feet in front of it. Here, we got a kick drum. It's right here. Thump, thump, thump. Kind of whack, whack, whack. Are we just gonna make that louder? Or is the goal to put a microphone, which is very different than a human ear, inside of the drum, which is not where you're going to put your head. No one's going to put their head in there. And then we're going to use subwoofers, which are these like mechanical devices, these acoustics, they're like instruments of themselves almost. We're going to use processing like EQ, and we're going to use dynamics, and we're going to shape it in ways that are not natural. And we're going to end up with this just rocking huge kick drum sound. It's like that's what everybody wants. But one thing we can't say about that is we just made it louder without changing anything out. That's not what we're doing.
Who was the guy who was the guy that used 3 mics on the drums and got these amazing sounds?
Was that Jesus? I think Jesus did that.
No, I know his name. I know his name.
But
that was every engineer in the 50s.
Kick snare overhead.
Famous. He did.
I totally am I'm in total mental sync with what Devan has just said. So now check out the difference between speakers. Now, and I'm not talking pro audio right away. Let's just take a show.
You gotta look at Riley. Look at Riley, man. Look at Riley.
When you go to a stereo shop, people shop for speakers that have a certain color, sound color that they like. So some people like Kefs, some people like B&Ws, some people like other stuff.
JBL.
JBL, whatever it may be, Sony. Now let's take a look at what Meyer, and I don't think they're alone in this. Meyer's objective is just pure linear audio. That's it. Whatever signal you give me, I am going to faithfully reproduce out of my loudspeaker. And there are some engineers that record music that like to use tape. Why do they like tape? Well, because tape actually colors the sound.
Tape has a distortion that, yes.
There's an actual, well, let's leave tape hiss off to the side, but there's an actual compression and a reduction, and a tape makes the recording sound different than if it is captured, you know, numerically with the greatest mics. And then I'll finish with what Devan said. There's a really good Canadian orchestra called the Arion Ensemble, Arion, and they have a Baroque orchestra. And let me tell you that the recording method on that Baroque orchestra is unlike anything you have ever heard. Like rich bass and flutes in your face, and it is a faithful reproduction of what they were playing, but it sounds nothing like the museum that Devan was just so accurately described.
Well, look, look, the kick drum example. Okay, if you're gonna mix, I don't know, if you're gonna mix Joe Satriani and you are gonna put a microphone a couple feet out in front of, the kick drum, and you're going to turn that up in a system that is like totally flat. So you've got like this flat reference microphone, and you've got a system that's been tuned totally flat, and you like kind of just make the acoustic sound of the kick drum the way it sounds just naturally. Like if you're standing next to it, you listen to it, you go, okay, we're going to make that louder. That's not going to work. No, that is not going to work with Joe Satriani. But if you're mixing like a jazz trio
that totally works
for 200 people, it's like that might work. See, it's all then. I guess my point is like, I just feel like it comes back to what is the goal here philosophically? Right. What are we trying to do? Are we trying to just make the acoustic sound of what we would hear if we were just sort of standing in the space? Are we just trying to make that a little bit louder without changing anything else? Is that what we're doing? Or are we trying to use technology? And the kick drum is it's like the quintessential example. It's hard to argue with. It's like so clear. We're using the technology. We want anything but flat. Like we want subs that augment frequencies that maybe even only the microphones could pick up. It's not even a matter of like, well, I guess technically you could put your head in there and you could hear that. No, it's like it's not even the point. So it's like it just comes back to what your goal is.
Yeah,
I think
Am I
I
missing the
think
point?
Bruce.
I
a
think
lot
it's
of
also
Am I wait, Bruce, wait a second. Am I missing the point? Am I missing the point that when we do sound reinforcement and a live show, what we want to do is capture what the artist did in the studio and present it to the audience. And if we're going to do that, then we have to use the electronics to get the same sound. Am I wrong on that?
What about people that don't
but
do?
but
What
they
about
but they can
somebody
be
that's never
used
done
in
the studio
different
recording?
ways. As Devin is arguing, is that the answer to your question isn't binary. It is you could use a modern sound system to achieve several different colors of sound that might be just a pure amplification of what's heard, or it could be EDM with absolutely butt puke bass, and your whole body is being hammered, and that's the objective. Just I think Devin's quite right. You got to think about what your objective is. And I was referring to Glenn Johns.
Yes, yes.
So
Yeah.
Glenn had this great interview where he's like, just exactly what Devin said. When I'm putting the bass drum, like I don't want to stick it in the bass drum because no one sticks their head in a bass drum, when they're listening to it.
Right.
Although it can faithfully recreate that sound on a system. But yes, it's
Yeah, I mean,
I totally
I don't.
agree that you can achieve different sonic objectives with the same source.
Yeah,
all
I
about
think. Yeah,
music styles too, isn't it?
all about what?
Music styles as well. You're not going to do the same style for an orchestra as you would a rock band. You're going to have different sounds. Sometimes three mics on a jazz drum kit can sound great, but you wouldn't do that with a rock style.
Well, generally, you'd think, an audio engineer, I mean, ideally, would show up to the table with certain skill sets and certain technologies, and their interest would be, well, first of all, like if you're being hired, like what does the person who's hiring me want? Like,
Right.
What's the event?
what do they need and what do they want? A lot of engineers I've seen in my life have, my short life here so far have like they just shown up and be like, this is what I do, and I'm just going to do it either because they're insecure and they don't know how to do anything else, or they just don't care. They just don't care what the client wants or what the music needs. They just do what they do. It's like guys that are really, really great. They show up and it's like they really pay attention to the situation. In fact, even my dad taught me this. We do these things like for Christmas where we do like 10 performances in a row at some venue. We will literally read the audience as we uniquely as the audio engineers out in front, the musicians, the directors, they don't get to see this. We get to kind of feel out the audience as they trickle in because we sit there at front of house for these shows. It's not like we disappear in the green room and just come back right at, the downbeat. We get to kind of see the audience come in and we go, you know what, tonight it's a sea of gray. We're going to mix about 6 dB lower, or tonight we got the high schoolers here. They bust them in. So we're going to it's like, you know what I mean? You tailor to what the audience wants, you tailor to what the clients wants. I don't know. That to me is kind of what it comes down to.
You know what's interesting, Devin, is the person that I find has the most fascinating job, the job that I would love to have, but I'm too old now, is Troy in Salt Lake City. Isn't that an amazing production? And
Yeah,
he
incredible.
has choir, lavs, bells the size of a car,
Yeah.
just amazing things. And that's got to be in an extraordinary production. That's on my bucket list to hear.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I mean, that position, that the position that he's in is a balancing act. You're having to balance so many interests of, people who, are forces of nature, and there's a lot of strong personalities involved, and it's an incredibly complicated situation. It's an
We're
amazing.
talking about the Tabernacle Choir in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
Just about to ask. What's the
It's
try?
just like an amazing.
I would assume that it also changes kind of the venue or the type of act you're doing. Like Ken Porter is he does a lot of religious acts. He also does a lot of country acts. I mean, basically,
venue.
are you doing like Tate McRae right now, right?
Yep.
So what do you? Oh, he muted himself. Let me unmute you, Ken. There you go. You're unmuted.
Okay. Come back to Tate McRae. She's an entertainer, not a musician as much because of large pop. Are we on? Oh, no.
Yeah, we're live. Remember, everything here today is an opinion. So do your own research, folks.
Sometimes you have the dancing and stuff that a lot of these people do, they cannot keep without having, keep the notes, keep their music up. It goes back to Madonna, a bunch of them back in the days that it always was time that they're dancing and performing and stuff there. They can't really keep up and stay on pitch and stay with the music. Sometimes it's filled in because they just can't sing at that point. Coming back to church in
didn't Paula Abdul have a problem with that, if I remember correctly?
Yeah.
Wasn't she one of the more famous ones?
Yep. All right. So going on down the stuff, coming back to classical, and Devan, I assume you had form and analysis class with everyone else in music major, but you got to think back that composers back in the day in their time were very much driven for what the sound was going to be and why they arranged it and wrote it for what they do. That's why you have multiple violins and first and second violins, and you always have 10 or 12 of them and viola and the bass. But when you bring the cello into the mix, it makes a difference. It brings the whole string section, just opens it up and makes it pull together in a cohesive sound in the chords and all that stuff there. The point is that that also has to do with the hard floor for the smear of the thing to reinforce, because it's a single note. This dry does not make it blend together as much as the time smear in the group in that the little, everybody doesn't play in the same minute. It's not all in line. So that's why it comes up of there. So when you come back to say, well, did the original thing, is that they knew what they were designing for composing for their venues. And that's why venues today are somewhat like that, but the composition has to be there. Even down to where I always had a complaint is because classical timpanists always had wooden mallets because they didn't really have the way to do the others. Now, because I was a timpani major, like principal instrument, and I would rather play with some of the other mallets. It'd be hard mallets on every song.
Well, it's interesting. Okay, so I remember I'm a piano player, so when I played, a lot in college, I unfortunately don't play much anymore, but I'd play Rachmaninoff, for example. And, I mean, someone like Rachmaninoff was someone who was thoroughly involved in the modern world of music. I mean, they were like a full-time, working musician, and they were, in a competitive environment. Like they were, he was a hustling musician, and he was pushing the boundaries technically. I mean, he was very specific about what piano is very, like piano technology had come a long way. And it's like, to me, I don't, obviously we can't know because he's not around. But when I play some of his songs and listen to some of the symphonies, there's a part of me, I don't want to psychoanalyze too much, but it just seems like if Rachmaninoff had access to modern amplification technologies, I think he would have jumped all over it. I mean, there's just no doubt in my mind he'd be using that and going and like pushing the bound. He'd be the Hans Zimmer of today. Like, so the question becomes, if the goal, for example, doing sound for a Rachmaninoff, concerto or something, it's like, if the goal is we're just trying to do it the way that it would have been done back then. It's a museum. We're going to a museum. We want to experience it the way it would have been done. Then that's fine. You should do that. But if the goal is we can take this music and yes, he didn't have access to this technology, but Like, for example, think about the low frequency in some of those songs, like these big piano concertos, and he's like trying to extract more than what the instrument can even give. He's reaching, he's pushing. It's like, what if we could just take that a little bit further and we could augment the sound of the low strings on the piano with some subwoofers in a way that, of course, is not acoustically natural in any sense. But I doubt he would have said no to it. So,
Oh, he had a massive left hand.
yeah, and I think that people should be free to take those liberties if the situation is such that the people who are attending it and paying for the whole thing are like into it and like that's the goal, right? So you don't want to just shove that on people if it's not what they want and not what they're expecting. But it's like if the whole goal is, well, we just want to augment this because it can sound good. And honestly, it might have been what Rachmaninoff would have gone for if he'd had it. I don't see a problem with that.
Well, back in that era,
I did some work for the LA Philharmonic.
Yeah.
I did some work for the LA Philharmonic, and at one point in time, they were looking for a shotgun microphone because they wanted it as pure it can be, and they spent like I don't know 4 hours testing a 10 dB pad on a microphone to see which would be a better fit for their environment in the Hollywood Bowl. I couldn't hear the difference, but they sure could. And so I guess when you think about the purist of a symphony, you have to think about that they don't want auto-tune there. They want it as limited as possible. They want an amphitheater where the sound comes off the stage and then floats up to the audience.
Well, and just as Ken was saying, they actually selected the quantities of the instruments in order to achieve an acoustic balance that today can be achieved with a fader.
Yeah, I mean, and that's my point is that like you imagine, okay, so for example, here we have an ensemble on a stage, a classical ensemble, and we have two options. We can put a binaural microphone that is up there and we can basically, try to do whatever we can with totally flat speakers or whatever, and we have an array of speakers, and what we can do is we can basically have this idea of like we try to capture the sound source that's coming off the stage and then we just amplify it, but let the waveform basically traverse space and land at people's ears, otherwise unaffected. It's not affected frequency-wise, it's not affected dynamically, it's not affected spatially in any way. It's just louder. The amplitude of the waveform is just louder. It's like this pure idea of like just
transparency. Transparency is the word.
Total transparency. So that's option one. Option two is, well, we could take microphones and like you can place each microphone in front of each instrument and you can present to the audience by using speaker technology a sound that is of course not the same but sonically commensurate with literally if you listen to any one instrument in the mix, it's very close to what the instrumentalist is hearing, and then perhaps you can create a mix of those things. Yes, it's artificial. It's like breaking physics. You can't separate your ears. I mean, I guess unless you graft your ear on your foot and put it over by the cello. But like,
but
as like the Chinese,
I hear what you're
the Chinese
saying.
can do this apparently. But like, imagine being able to have your ears and take them off and go put them in front of all the instruments and then have this perfect mix of it all again. That's like maybe similar to how the conductor hears it. Like they're standing with this perfect balance, proximity wise and everything. Like you can cheat the laws of physics with technology to have perhaps a hyper experience.
Here's an example, Devan. I mixed, this was 1980 something, 83, 84. There, Thin Lizzy's guitar player, Gary Moore, has solo. He was very, very, very popular. He was a great writer, great guitarist, electric guitarist, had a full band. Ian Pace was on drums, all these famous musicians. We played the Royal Albert Hall with the London Philharmonic Orchestra behind them. At that time, we had 120 channels at front of house, analog. There were 3 of us mixing, and we mic'd each individual violin, each oboe, We did like on timpani, okay, one mic for the timpani. You didn't mic each timpani. But yeah, I mean, the majority of those microphones, the band had, 24 channels at that time, at most, if I went nuts, to Gary Moore's band. But everything else was the orchestra. And it was amazing. I mean, his recording engineer was doing the orchestra. I was his front of house engineer, so they sent me their subgroups. I had a string subgroup. I had a horn subgroup. I had a percussion subgroup. And a woodwind. Sorry, and so that's what I took their mixes, and then I added in, bass guitar, drums, individually mic drums, and it was fantastic. So,
well, you bring in miking technique, Greg, right? You bring in miking technique,
there's a big difference. David? First of all, when you have a band with an orchestra behind it, you can't have the space of an orchestra's sound.
Right.
You can't have area miking. You have to have tight miking.
Yeah.
When you're doing just the orchestra,
that's different.
It's a completely different feel. I've mixed.
Well, what about Herschel's mic, David? What about Herschel's mic? Herschel's. Remember those mics?
Herschel's mic is for closed miking, just like a DPA for 4099.
Well, tell them a little bit about what Herschel came up with, because I think it's a very interesting thing.
All right. Well, he didn't come up with it. The Germans came up with it, but he found it and brought it to America. They actually took an MKE2, the tiny little mic, they put it on a stem, and they took the button, what do you call it? The end button off string instruments, the end pin off the string instruments, and shoved this microphone inside the violin, the bass viola, and the upright bass. And then they had an EQ box for the power. And so now you're miking in the sweet spot inside of the instrument. And it sounded so amazing that the Grammys used it. Barbra Streisand used it. And Herschel was the guy who was providing them. And I have those mics in my garage right now, and I don't know what to do with them. Because you have to have a luthier to come in to drop the bridge, so that you can pull the end pin out and put these hollow end pins in that the mic screwed into. I mean, it was a great system. It started with ELO and the Moscow Symphony or the Leningrad Symphony, and the Russians told their guys, you're pulling your end pins. And they were going, my instrument is 400 years old. They said, it doesn't matter, you're pulling them. And so the ELO show in London or wherever it was the first time they used this system, and it was phenomenal. But it just requires a whole lot of work to make it work.
But that was because that's what we were talking about, the voicing of the instruments.
Well, it was in the sweet spot. So there was no ambient sound. It was just that great, the shaft was about 4 inches long, and it was about 1 foot long on a cello. And it just went inside the instrument. It was great. It was a great idea, just too much work.
Yeah.
Well,
let me bring something very important here. It's epitome, the pinnacle, of miking skills and mixing skills merged together here. In this particular case, to do the proper sound reinforcement. When I was at NAMM, I wish you would see that. My very good friend, Danny Abelson, who writes for Front of House magazine occasionally, showed me 2 videos. One video was of a very old school analog mixer of the band whose name was mentioned today, and how the front of house engineer approaches the mix with his movements. The movement is what I'm discussing right now. And one of the newer, let's say, kids, one of these days, on a digital console, having everything in Unity and doing the auto dynamics for him. And he said, look at this guy. When a solo on the guitar comes, he puts a finger on the fader and just drags this thing up. And when the solo is done, he brings it back down. I'm obviously exaggerating the trajectory of the movement. And on the other console, the movements were so subtle or none, and there are no dynamics. What I'm aiming at is what Devin mentioned, the miking technique, the front of house mixing, and the mixer's knowledge of the music are inseparable part of the whole show, of the whole concert. And that's what I think is missing these days with the guys who are mixing, because if
they're
they
operators.
are going to lengths, yes, they operators. If they go into certain lengths to supplement the talent with technology, it's great that the technology is there. And somebody mentioned, if Rahmaniev was here today and had all of this arsenal of technology to his use, he would use a lot of it. I agree. But in which way? Creatively or as a supplement to his skills? That's a good question.
Well, here,
yeah, for sure.
Let me tell one tiny story from my past. A really great success story that I have that I carry around with me is in town here. There was a professional orchestra that was started. We didn't have a professional orchestra for forever. And I got brought in because the guy who started it came from LA, and he was kind of interested in pushing the boundaries and doing kind of like new classical. And so we did a demo. I invited him over to our shop. We did a demo in surround sound with some speakers, and I was like, "Hey, I'm interested in like getting involved in doing sound for the orchestra." And he heard the demo, and he's like, This is very intriguing." On the spot, he said, "We're bringing in Joshua Bell to the medium sized performance hall in town here. This is not a big performance hall. I mean, you can barely fit the orchestra on the stage. We're bringing in Joshua Bell. I want you to go crazy. I want you to do whatever you just I trust you. I want to do what you do." And you should have seen it. We had a Nexo line array that like the cellos had to like sit around the base of the stand. I mean, it was so ridiculous. Had cardioid subs. We mic'd every individual instrument. We sound checked. I did virtual sound check for 2 days, and um, at one. So here's the thing about it. This is very controversial because this is the first time that the orchestra had like done anything like this. They brought some people in from the LA area, and at one point during one of the rehearsals, the trumpet section, why it's always the trumpet section, they said, you know,
Damn those trumpet players.
I don't like having this microphone in front. What are we doing with all these mics? We don't need to be mic'd. This is, so they put up a stink. And so there was like a big like get together, like the head honchos kind of the whole thing got together, and they said, "Devan, we want to do this is like the day before the performance. They're going to bring Josh in the next day. Like said, we want to get together and hear what you've done." And so we it was like sink or swim. They're going to go out there in the middle of the thing. They're going to have the audience or the orchestra play. So they're standing out where the audience is in the middle. There's a bunch of people out there. "We want you to turn the sound system off, and we just want to hear it acoustically. And then we want you to turn the sound system on, and then we want you to turn it off and turn it on." They want to A/B it. They want to see, because they said, I mean, I was prepared for them to basically call the whole thing off and say, "We're not going to use the sound system." If it doesn't sound the way they want, they were just going to say, "We're sorry, this is a huge mistake. We're just not going to use the sound system at all. And, sorry." So we did this for like 20 minutes. I mean, we did like I gave them the iPad so they could go turn it on and off themselves and walk around. And so 20 minutes later, the guy comes over to me and he's got this grin and he goes, um, "So we're all very confused. We definitely like the sound of the amplified orchestra much better, and we do not understand why." And so he just left it at that. So we did the show, 7 encores. I had people coming up to me for days afterwards, like weeks, in fact, saying that was the most amazing sonic experience. And we had people that follow Josh around and go to like concert after concert. They follow him and they're like, "He's never sounded, that's the most amazing thing I've ever heard, being to many of his events. I've never heard it like that. What did you do?" I mean, I could tell there was something different. And so that I carry that story around with me because it's like that really was an example where I think I give them a lot of credit. They were very honest with themselves because there was a philosophical rub, but they decided to let their ears win out. And they admitted to themselves, this is not philosophically correct, but it sounds better. And yeah, that was a very interesting experience. It was a learning experience. And since then, I've had a really, really close relationship with that orchestra, and we've done a lot of really interesting projects since. But
Congratulations.
Devan,
That's
can I ask you quickly, Devan, how did you mic Joshua?
So there was some question at the beginning whether we'd be able to clip like a 4099 on, and that was a no. So we ended up getting I believe it was a 4011 on a mic stand. It was about just kind of up over the top.
Oh, that was just like a boom and the mic above it.
Yep.
Yeah, because he's got a well, at least today the guy's got like a $45 million axe. You don't want to drop his violin.
Yeah, and yeah, but I mean it was like the sound, it was the sound of a more kind of Hans Zimmer-esque experience, but it was Joshua Bell playing classical music, and just that was just sonically, because here's the thing about it. If you had turned up the sound and yes, it's louder, but it like sounds unnatural and weird, they would have said no to it.
right.
But that really was an example where, for the most part, you turn the sound system on and it kind of just gets louder. But it also kind of expands the sonic capability beyond what's sort of strictly acoustic, but in a way that's like not offensive. In fact, it's actually pleasing.
No,
And
that's actual dynamic range that you're discussing. And one of the issues, we have all of this density on dynamic range, and for the most part, modern music is just fucking loud, right? I mean, they just
compressed.
they just turn it.
Goes to 11, baby. Goes to 11.
Yeah, you just look at the waveform going across the screen. Here's the center line, and this stuff is just like right at the boundaries across. Why do we need all these bits of density for for dynamic range when there isn't any?
Well, orchestras are typically are loud with all the instruments playing, but also you have the the dynamic range comes up there. So you got like soft parts, hard parts, but you also have points that come up, some instruments up to the point and then come down when they change the registers.
Exactly.
And that is a point where that's all in the artistic design. The other point could be too, is that we have neutered rooms from what the classical people had done. And that's so not the same thing, because you do have live rooms, a lot of the other rooms that have it that also looks like it's a surround sound type feel.
A lot of rooms fill the density too. If you've got a big band and you've got the PA going, the room itself, the reflections and that, and depending on what frequencies, can make it sound wonderful and filled out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to get the guy that mixes Andre Rieu to come in the room, because that is an experience. If you guys are not familiar with Andre Rieu, the Austrian band leader, he plays with a full orchestra.
That I've seen his videos, and that mix is insane. I don't know how they do it. It's insane.
Yeah, absolutely. Big rooms, lots of things going on, dancing, singing, multiple instruments, Macarena, whatever you got.
Well, and then they do their big outdoor concerts, and you look at that rig, there's probably 50, 60,000 people sitting outside in the street watching it, and just like, holy cow, how can they mix that good for that many people on that big of a stage? And you can't even, half the time, you don't even see half the mics. And I don't know what mic they put on Andre, because I don't see any mic on him, but yet you can hear him like there's a mic like right here in front of him. So I don't know if they have a mic up here or what.
He's got it in his head.
I got a question for everybody. When you mix, are you mixing mono or are you mixing stereo typically?
Oh, you just open a whole different kind of world.
Yeah, that could be.
I call it enhanced mono. Because the left side's not hearing what the right side's doing. So I do a little bit of a separation, but not much.
It's a very fat mono.
Yes, a fat mono. Yes, enhanced mono.
Unless you're in the sphere.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, then
you
you're
go.
in Robert land.
Yeah, but with all that delay.
Well, all the Cirque shows too. I mean, it's all placement all over the damn place, but.
Oh, the Cirque du Soleil. Yeah, I mean, you've got stuff coming from multiple angles, and even Gregory knows. He was in that place in Vegas showing
depends
all
on
of
the
speakers
theater.
pointing, in it to booths. I mean, like they have a speaker for a booth, and then I mean, holy smokes.
Well, one thing that it's interesting. So, one thing I've got my guys working on is so I'm looking at all these object-based mixing systems out there, and they're super cool, and it's amazing what people have done. If you can get into that, it's a barrier to entry. It's expensive, it's hard to set up, but like once you're in there and you're doing object-based mixing, super, super cool. But one thing that I haven't seen anybody do is be able to, for example, in an object environment, you can take two stereo sources like a keyboard left and right. You can link them together. And you can kind of scoot them around in tandem within the object world, right? Your environment. Um, but what I haven't seen anybody do per se is take and actually decipher the interstereophonic content and arbitrarily break that out to multi-source. Now, remember like in the old days, you've got like DTS up mixers that will take your stereo input on your home receiver and you can like push 5.1 emulation and it'll kind of like arbitrarily break it out to try to make some 5.1 out of a stereo mix. But they like sounded kind of phasey and wonky sometimes, and those are usually high latency anyway. So what's interesting is that we developed a zero latency stereo to arbitrary number of channel up mixer that maintains phase compatibility and all these things so that you could continue to mix in and think and operate in stereo, but then you could at least get some multi-channel differentiation out of it, especially for sources that are like it's not just thinking about like dragging a mono object around and having it smoothly transition between like 7 speakers or whatever.
Placing them in 3D space.
Yeah. And it's more about like the cool thing about it is it takes the interstereophonic content that is between two correlated left and right signals, and it breaks that out even. So that's actually pretty unique. It's called an up mixer. Now the thing is, I think there's a gap in the market right now for there's a lot of people that like they're not gonna migrate or upgrade to a full-blown object-based mixing system. They're never gonna do it, not anytime soon. But you know what? Like if they're just got their stereo mix that they've already got going on and they want to get some separation and spread it out a little bit more in like a tasteful way, an up mixer might be perfect for them because it's like, relatively inexpensive, like easy implementation type of thing. There was actually a demonstration at NAMM I didn't get to go to where they're doing like real-time source separation. So there's like a DJ and I think it's an L acoustic system where they like have the ability to like strip out certain elements. And
the Pioneer apparently can do real-time stems.
Yeah, real-time stems, but that's a little bit different. I mean, it's cool. It's very amazing. But also, it's not even about, so that's like source separation where you're trying to split out the individual. But I'm just talking about the idea of taking the interstereophonic content, the correlated content in a stereo spread, and then breaking it up into multi-channel audio, but maintaining phase compatibility and all these sorts of things. That I do these demonstrations where I set up these speakers and I play stereo recordings through them and into like a multi-channel thing with the up mixer. It's very, very stunning what it can do, and it's so simple. I think there's a market for that. In fact, we're probably
the playback system's going to be the market killer, though. That's where your cost comes in.
The what?
So, Fred, are we getting you jealous, man? Are we getting you jealous there, Fred? All you do is mix this little, people talking, referees, crowd noise. Are you kidding?
No, I used up mixers a few times. I mean, they do their job.
Yeah, a lot of them are like.
I thought we were making you jealous, Fred. They're just saying, "Man, I got to get into this. Got to get out of trouble."
I am jealous of all. I am jealous of all you people that get to do music. I mean, I'm a sports guy, so I am definitely jealous of all of you. But I do get to use a few of these toys every once in a while. Matter of fact, I was gonna reach out to one of you to. I just joined the Italian American Club, a couple streets over from where I live, and went over for a bingo session the other night, and the sound was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. Wireless mics that were just completely square waved, overdriven, couldn't understand a word. So I saw the president walk by, I handed him my business card, and I said, "Hey, I can help you with this." and he was supposed to call me yesterday, but of course I didn't hear from him. But it's a simple system. It's a couple of Sennheiser, receivers into a Crown amp, but I'm sure that one of them's on line level feeding a mic input. I mean, it just was horrendous. And it's amazing.
Did he know it was bad?
Yeah, that would have been my question. Does he even know that it has a problem?
Well, obviously they either they don't know that there's a problem or nobody cares.
Right.
Nobody cares.
And I think that's the big thing is that nobody wants to touch it, because somebody came and put the system in, and it's like, don't touch it, because if you touch it, you might break it.
That's
right.
Auto-tune to the rescue. Auto-tune to the rescue. Here we go.
Not only
How many people have gone into the bar and seen the Yamaha bolted to the wall with like duct tape over certain parts of the board? And
exactly.
Like, I need to move that. No, you don't.
Don't touch it.
You can't move that.
Don't touch it.
I got a philosophical question for Devan. I have a customer that's Jewish, and he's a temple here in Nashville. He said is terrible because they basically go in, do their sound check before 6 o'clock on Friday night, and then they cannot touch the mixer till after 6 o'clock on Saturday night. So it's nothing but feedback, and it sounds terrible all through stuff, but nobody can fix it. So the question is, if you had D-feedback or other things, auto mixing and stuff to it, is that working on the Sabbath?
No, the AI.
I can tell you that the Allen and Heath has what do they call it? VR something or other. Allen and Heath has a thing where you can turn on auto gain. That's the easy part, is the auto gain, and then they have a secondary one that handles like actual levels, so they wouldn't have to touch it, and they could probably get a decent mix out of it.
It's like an auto.
I think the feedback would be the perfect solution. But ladies and gentlemen, and children of all ages, I hate to do this, mixing.
I mean,
on Allen and Heath consoles, they're only on the first 8 channels, and was fussing with this one in the theater at the that we're redoing, and it's not very good. Nothing beats the Dugan. And the only as far as I know, the only consoles that have the Dugan built in and
Yamaha.
The 5045 there is Yamaha. Yeah. So
let's bring in a Christian mixer on Friday.
I was just going to say, get a Gentile. I'm going to do the mixer.
So Yamaha.
He can drive over there.
Yamaha in their specialty drawer. You don't even have to pay extra for it. Has all the Neve plugins. And Dugan has a 16-channel Dugan you can put on any channels. And if you get the DM7 or above, every channel has Dugan on it. You just turn it on, and it does its thing.
Devan, David touched on a point that actually happens around the world. I go to the Kingdom of Bhutan a lot, and they're strict Buddhist. Well, you can't have a butcher, so they bring in people from other religions. They're the butchers, so that so
the Jewish religion.
Yeah. Well, it happens all the time. It happens all the time everywhere in the world on that situation. But listen, boys and girls, we've been going now an hour and a half. This has been totally fascinating, absolutely totally and we barely touched on NAMM. I guess we have another show for next week, so come on back for next week. Yeah, there you go. That's the story, and that's what I was thinking.
To share I had a controversial opinion I was going to share and see what people thought. I guess we'll have to do it next time.
We'll have to wait next week, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, just remember, everything you heard today was an opinion, so do your own research for sure. We'll be back again next week for our 297th Thinking Out Loud with Friends. Invite your friends, share the link. You've stayed this long, you might as well stay a little bit longer. We're going to close the room from the standpoint of out in the real world of streaming, but we're going to stay in here and continue the conversation. And remember, you make it happen. Have a great week, everybody. And if you want to be part of the show, you know how to reach any one of us, and we will send you the link. Remember to leave comments, only good ones, of course. and thumbs up and share the show. So thanks, everybody. And we're going to just, we'll all wave goodbye to you here, if I can say that. Bye. And we'll see you next week.
All right.
Bye-bye.